Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk about something many people experience every day: thinking too much. Not just thinking, but overthinking. The kind of thinking that does not stop. The kind that follows you into quiet moments. Late at night, during a walk, while trying to fall asleep. Your body may be resting, but your mind continues moving. One thought appears, then another, then another. Soon your mind becomes crowded. You remember something that happened earlier, a conversation, a small mistake, a moment you wish you handled differently. Your mind begins replaying it. What should I have said? Why did I say that? What will they think about me now? The questions repeat again and again. Sometimes the thoughts move toward the future. What if something goes wrong? What if I fail? What if I make the wrong decision? The mind begins imagining many possible outcomes. Some of them are unlikely. Some of them may never happen at all. But the brain treats these possibilities as real problems. And slowly the mind becomes tired. Overthinking does not always appear during stressful moments. Sometimes it appears when everything is quiet, late at night, in a silent room, when there are no distractions. The mind suddenly becomes loud. Many people know this feeling. They lie in bed, close their eyes, and hope to sleep. But the thoughts continue. The brain begins reviewing the entire day. Things that happened. Things that might happen tomorrow. Things that might happen next week. The mind moves through time. Past, future, possibilities, but rarely the present moment. Overthinking often feels like problem solving. It feels like the mind is trying to help, trying to prepare, trying to protect, trying to avoid mistakes. But too much thinking creates a different problem. Instead of clarity, it creates confusion. Instead of calm, it creates anxiety. Instead of solutions, it creates endless questions. And the more we try to solve every possibility in our head, the more complicated everything becomes. Many people believe they must control their thoughts completely. They believe the mind should always be calm. But the human mind does not work that way. Thoughts naturally appear. Ideas come and go. Memories return unexpectedly. This is normal. The problem is not thinking. The problem is when thinking never pauses. When every small idea becomes a long mental conversation. When every situation becomes a problem that must be solved immediately. At that point, the mind stops being helpful. It becomes exhausting. Understanding this is the first step. Because when we begin to notice our thinking patterns, we gain something important: awareness. And awareness is where change begins. To understand overthinking, we need to understand something about the human brain. The brain was designed to protect us. Long ago, humans survived by noticing danger quickly. A strange sound in the forest. A sudden movement in the dark. An unfamiliar situation. Thinking carefully helped people survive. The brain learned to ask questions. Is this safe? What could go wrong? How can I avoid danger? This ability was once very useful. But in the modern world, many dangers are not physical. They are emotional. A conversation, a mistake, a decision. And the brain reacts to these situations in a similar way. It begins analyzing everything. Imagine someone who sends a message to a friend. The message is simple, friendly, normal. But the reply does not come quickly. Minutes pass. Then more time passes. The mind begins asking questions. Did I say something wrong? Did they misunderstand me? Are they upset? The brain begins creating stories. Possibilities appear one after another. Each possibility creates a new thought. Soon the mind is no longer observing the situation. It is building an entire story around it. This happens in many parts of life. A meeting at work, a conversation with a colleague, a decision about the future. The brain wants certainty, but life rarely offers perfect certainty. And when certainty is missing, the mind keeps searching. Another example appears when people think about the future. A student preparing for an exam might begin with a simple thought: what if I do not do well? This question creates another thought: what if I fail the test? Then another: what will happen to my plans? Soon the mind begins imagining many different outcomes, some realistic, some unlikely. But the brain treats every possibility as something that must be solved. This is how overthinking grows. One thought becomes many thoughts, and the mind begins moving in circles. The more we think, the more complicated the situation appears. There was once a man who often struggled with overthinking. Every evening he replayed conversations in his mind. A small comment from a coworker, a joke that did not land well, a moment that felt slightly awkward. He examined every detail. What did that expression mean? Did they notice my mistake? He believed thinking more would help him understand the situation. But instead of clarity, he only felt more tension. One day he realized something interesting. The people he worried about were not thinking about the situation anymore. They had already moved on with their day. The conversation that stayed in his mind for hours had already disappeared from theirs. This realization changed something important. He understood that the mind often holds on to things longer than necessary. Another common form of overthinking happens during decision-making. Imagine someone choosing between two opportunities. At first, the decision seems simple, but the mind begins comparing every possibility. What if this option is better? What if I regret my choice? The person tries to predict the future perfectly, but perfect prediction is impossible. So the mind keeps analyzing. More information, more possibilities, more questions. Instead of making progress, the person becomes stuck. This is one of the quiet dangers of overthinking. Thinking too much can prevent action. The mind searches for the perfect answer, but sometimes progress only appears after a decision is made, not before. Overthinking creates the illusion of control. It feels like we are solving problems, but often we are simply repeating the same thoughts. Understanding this pattern is important, because once we recognize how overthinking works, we can begin to change how we respond to it. And that is where the next part of the story begins. But there is another pattern that appears inside the mind when overthinking begins. The mind often enters a loop. One thought appears. The mind tries to solve it, but the answer is not clear. So another thought appears. Another question follows. Soon the mind begins circling around the same idea. The same question returns again and again, even when nothing new has changed. This is how thinking slowly becomes overthinking. The mind is not moving forward anymore. It is simply repeating the same path. Many people notice this pattern especially at night. During the day, the world is busy. There are conversations, messages, tasks, noise. The mind is constantly reacting to what is happening around us. But at night, everything becomes quiet. The room is silent. The lights are low. And suddenly the mind has space to speak. Thoughts that were hidden during the day begin to appear. Small worries return. Unfinished questions return. and the mind begins to review the past. Sometimes the past becomes the loudest voice. A moment from yesterday, a mistake from last week, a decision from years ago. The mind replays these moments like a movie again and again and again. Each replay tries to find a better answer. What should I have said? What could I have done differently? But the past cannot change, yet the mind continues searching for a different ending. Another reason people overthink is the desire to make perfect decisions. Many people believe every important choice must be exactly right. They search for the best option, the safest option, the option that will guarantee success. But perfect decisions rarely exist. Every path contains uncertainty. Every choice carries risk. When the mind tries to remove all uncertainty, thinking becomes endless. The brain keeps collecting information. More details, more possibilities, more comparisons. But instead of clarity, confusion grows. Another influence on overthinking is the modern world itself. Today, the human mind receives more information than ever before. News, messages, social media, videos, notifications. The brain rarely experiences true silence. New information continues arriving every hour. Each piece of information creates new thoughts, and the mind becomes crowded. It becomes harder for the brain to rest. This is why many people feel mentally tired even when their bodies are not exhausted. The mind has simply been processing too much. And when the mind becomes overloaded, thinking becomes chaotic. Overthinking can also create another hidden problem. It can stop action. When people analyze every possibility, they often delay decisions. They wait for more clarity, more certainty, more confidence. But sometimes clarity only appears after we take action, not before. Thinking has value. Careful reflection helps us learn and grow. But when thinking becomes endless, it stops being helpful. Instead of guiding us forward, it keeps us standing in the same place. Recognizing this difference is important, because once we see the pattern clearly, we begin to realize something important. The mind does not always need more thinking. Sometimes it simply needs space to rest. And learning how to give the mind that space is where the next part of the story begins. At this point, an important question appears. If overthinking is so common, how can we begin to calm the mind? The answer is not to force our thoughts to disappear. The human mind does not work that way. Thoughts will always appear. Memories will return. Questions will arise. The goal is not to eliminate thinking. The goal is to change our relationship with it. Many people try to fight their thoughts. They tell themselves to stop thinking. They try to push the thoughts away. But the mind often reacts in the opposite way. The more we fight a thought, the stronger it returns. Instead of fighting the mind, a more helpful approach is to observe it. Imagine sitting quietly and noticing your thoughts as they pass. A worry appears. Then it fades. Another thought appears. Then it fades as well. When we observe thoughts without chasing them, something interesting happens. The mind begins to slow down, not immediately, but gradually. Another powerful step is returning attention to the present moment. Overthinking often lives in two places, the past and the future. The past cannot be changed. The future cannot be fully predicted. But the present moment is where life actually happens. Sometimes a simple action can bring the mind back to the present. A slow breath, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the sound of the room around you. These small moments anchor the mind. They remind us that not every thought requires attention. Another helpful practice is writing. Many people discover that thoughts become calmer when they move from the mind onto paper. Instead of carrying everything inside the head, the thoughts are placed somewhere visible. Questions become sentences. Worries become words. And once they are written down, they often lose some of their intensity. Writing creates distance between the thinker and the thought. Another important lesson is learning to accept uncertainty. Many people overthink because they want complete control. They want every decision to be perfect, every outcome to be predictable. But life rarely offers that kind of certainty. Every meaningful choice contains some level of risk. Every path contains unknown possibilities. Learning to move forward without perfect answers is an important skill. It allows the mind to relax, because not every question needs to be solved immediately. Sometimes the best solution appears only after we take a step forward. Action often brings clarity. Experience teaches more than endless analysis. This is why people who take small actions often feel less trapped in their thoughts. They move. They experiment. They learn. The mind begins to focus on real experiences instead of imagined possibilities. Another quiet change happens when people become more gentle with themselves. Many overthinkers are very self-critical. They replay mistakes. They judge their past decisions. They worry about how others see them. But no human life is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone says things they later regret. Everyone faces uncertainty. Learning to forgive small imperfections allows the mind to breathe again. Instead of replaying the past endlessly, the mind begins to release it. There is also something important to remember about thoughts. Not every thought is a fact. The mind can imagine many scenarios. Some are useful, some are unrealistic. But the brain does not always distinguish between imagination and reality. This is why awareness is so important. When we notice a thought, we can ask a simple question. Is this helping me? If the answer is no, we can gently let the thought pass. This practice takes time. It takes patience. But slowly the mind learns a new habit. Instead of chasing every thought, it learns to release them. And as this habit grows, something surprising happens. Silence appears between thoughts. Small moments of mental space. Moments when the mind is simply present, not analyzing the past, not predicting the future, just experiencing the moment as it is. These moments may seem small, but they are powerful, because a calm mind sees the world more clearly. Decisions become easier, emotions become more balanced, and life begins to feel lighter. Overthinking often convinces us that more thinking will solve everything. But sometimes clarity comes from stepping back, from breathing, from allowing the mind to rest. Just as the body needs sleep, the mind needs stillness. Without moments of quiet, the mind becomes exhausted. But with a little space, it begins to recover. So the next time you notice your thoughts racing, pause for a moment. Take a breath. Notice the thought without following it too far. Remind yourself that not every thought requires a solution. Some thoughts simply pass like clouds in the sky. They appear, they move, they disappear. And when we learn to let them pass, the mind slowly returns to calm. Thank you for listening today. If this message helped you reflect on your own thoughts, carry that awareness with you into the next quiet moment. See you in the next story.